that is probably going to see, if any, there is any sort of small tornado that can cause some brief damage, that's where it is. So even with the latest radar scans and the velocity product, it does not look as, I don't want to say ominous, because I think that earlier you could see the rotation and it was building, but I think that it's something that we at least are seeing some good signs that this may not be impacting, this may be kind of spinning itself out and finally ending its life cycle when it comes to being involved in this tornado warning. So like I said, I think that we're getting better over the last 30 minutes or so from this storm, which clearly had some of that air that was intook. You can see with that red that away from the radar, the rest of it is green. When you don't see those two colors mixed together, we often don't have that rotation. And that's what we're looking at right now as the storm continues to work its way across the interstate. You're likely getting some larger hail with this as well. And I think that for the most part here over the next several hours, we're still going to monitor the threat for this potential tornado here in Madison County, Illinois. So those are the main things that we'll look at here. And I want to continue to at least look at this from a sense that there still may be a possible tornado. Now, I know we have about 20 minutes on this warning so far, but I still want to monitor this even though as it's still starting to come apart a little bit. So until we can get you the all clear specifically and it transitions to tornado warnings or until it's severe thunderstorm warning or they modify this specific tornado warning, then we're still going to stay with you here as we still look at that possibility for a small, brief spin-up tornado, which once again is not something that I'm looking at with many of these other storms. I think mainly what we're going to be looking at, and you can see even some of these storms, and I want to look at just how this looks over the last 30 minutes. Right here, while this may not be a specific tornado warning at all, there's still some rotation in a little bit of these storms as not only these thunderstorms develop and create outflows within each other. So they have these bursts of rain-cooled air, and I think we're running along that hot air that's on the Illinois side, and we're seeing that start to spin a little bit at the surface, and that's where I think we're getting this. But as long as I see, at least on this specific product right here, as long as I see this area, I still think the possibility of a tornado is there. And until that starts to flatten out a little bit, I see a couple of more signatures, and the National Weather Service sees that as well, and lets this tornado warning expire. I still plan on staying with you and helping you on the Madison County, Illinois side. So be prepared for this, and this is something that we're, like I said, from a standpoint of what we're looking at from some of our products with the National Weather Service, and they have some smaller hail, but we still have this thunderstorm possibly capability of producing that tornado. So that's what we're going to look out here. And like I said, in Alhambra, this is one of the spots right here. And I think it's starting to flatten out a little bit, but I still want to look at this area right here specifically. That's where we might have this tornado threat still in place. This is a very small tornado, but it is worth watching until this area, let's call it, catches up to the rest of that storm ahead, and I think it's in that process, right? So for the next few minutes, that's what we're going to continue to look at. And Ashley, you said the emergency alert is going off on your phones. I have mine turned off. What's is right? Okay, perfect. So the tornado warning still is in place for Madison County. So, and that was the EAS alert that's going off on probably your phone here for the next 20, 25 minutes. And that's what we're going to look at here. So once again, kind of a reset. The big picture is this is a small spin-up tornado that has the possibility of reaching the ground. This is not a confirmed tornado, but we have seen a storm spotter see a brief rope that was working its way to the ground. We don't know that it's still on the ground here at this moment, but it is absolutely worth paying attention to. And I think that as this storm gets a little bit closer than the other one over the last 30 minutes, you can see how, let's call it right about here specifically, this is the area in question of rotation, right? And so that's why Alhambra is under that tornado warning. So really until we get past that, as this is moving at about 20 miles an hour, I think it's going to catch up to this to some degree, this part of the storm, and then they're essentially going to push themselves together. And that's where I think the tornado threat is going to end maybe a little sooner, other than some of the other areas. One area that's actually getting severe thunderstorms right now from Carlisle to Breeze, you have some smaller hail involved in this as well, but this is a wind threat. Even as I look at this velocity product there, you have a little stronger wind out on the edge of that. But the big picture here is this still is a possible tornado that we're going to look at. Like I mentioned, right here, right across 55, near Alhambra, we're not quite seeing that rotation as much anymore, but it's still the possibility right about here. And that's just as we catch up to some of the radar scans, it's going to be right about here. I'm going to put this. This is what you're looking at right here. And at this moment, I think that this is starting to weaken a little bit and not quite have as much rotation, but this is still another 20 minutes or so that they have this tornado warning in place. I'm going to get you back to the race as soon as I can, but we're going to watch some of these other areas that maybe start to spin as more storms are developing in Washington, Gray Summit, but these are not severe yet. Hail is still going to be a main threat for us as we look at this specific area on 55. That's the main thing here, and for the most part, we're still going to look at the possibility until the National Weather Service has taken this away. So as a reset, Eric, coming back, I want to just talk about what we're dealing with here. We have one tornado warning in Madison County, Illinois until the next 25 minutes or so officially. It may be ended earlier than that. The storm signature is showing us that it's starting to weaken a little bit, which is going to get us off your air and back to the race, and then we'll track again at 5. But I want to make sure that we stay with people here in Madison County, Illinois, at least at this moment, because if nothing else, your phone's gone off with the EAS alert, and you're also looking at some of these ominous storms, which are impacting others. And we could stay on forever and talk about those, but we're going to talk about this tornado warning specifically until we get a sign that it's starting to weaken a little bit more. And I still think it's right here where we have maybe just a little bit of rotation. We have seen that. It has weakened with recent scans over the last 10, 15 minutes since we put this on there, since the National Weather Service has had put that tornado warning in place for Madison County, Illinois. And that's what you're seeing here at this moment. I do want to look at the velocity product, and I'm going to loop this here over the last 45 minutes so you can see what this storm had. It had a little bit of this twist here, and it still is relatively there to some degree. And the only reason I say that it hasn't fully gone away is because we start to see a couple of those different colors here right here. You'll see this one. You'll see this one past 55. What I think is going on, at least at this moment, what I think is going on is the fact that we have some of this wind maybe turning right around there. And that's where I think if we have any sort of rotation in that counterclockwise fashion at the surface, that's going to generate that spin-up tornado. So that's what we're going to look at here. At this moment, otherwise, this tornado warning continues until 4:45. It's the only area that has a tornado warning at the moment. Otherwise, Breeze and Carlisle, you have a severe thunderstorm warning. We will not interrupt the race for that. I'm still going to monitor some of this other stuff to the south. And while it is not severe warned, that's something that we'll look at. But this storm doesn't have the large hail that it had at one point from Alhambra. And this is where you like to get in your safe space in Alhambra and beyond here at this moment, just in case if you hear anything going on right now. And I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit because it's right across 140 in Alhambra. And that's where I would expect the brief spin-up tornado is going to be here at this moment. So as we continue in storm alert, right here, that's the main area that I'm focusing on that may be getting some of that brief tornado possible. We've had a report of a rope funnel that's come and maybe not reached the surface of the ground. So the tornado warning still is in place here for the next 20 minutes as we continue to monitor this storm's progress off to the southeast. It's moving at about 20 miles an hour. Now, while this may not go outside this polygon, I do want to at least track this for you because you may be wondering on the other side, when's this going to reach my area? And if you're in Leaf and Grand Fork, this is 433. This is 436. This would be a storm that has a history of potentially moving that. And because of the storm's motion, how it may be speeding up a little bit, that's why I'm optimistic. I'm not going to be interrupting you till 4:45. for this specific storm unless we see more that more reasons to show that that is starting to turn at the surface and the possibility of bringing up that tornado. So like I mentioned, once again, we have this tornado warning in place for Madison County, Illinois. And I think behind this, if you're in Warden, even if you're in Olive, I think you're really not involved in this threat anymore. But still, this is enough of a signature right here. It tells me that there may be a very weak tornado on the end of it. So I just don't know that you're going to be able to get rid of this warning just yet. And it's right about here. And just because if I loop this over the last 30 minutes, you can almost watch this rotate just a little bit. And that's one of the reasons that the National Weather Service has issued that tornado warning. And while I don't think it's as tight as perhaps earlier, where we can monitor this and find out specifically where this was, because I think you're able to see it right about here. And I'm going to put this line on it, or this right about here. You'll start to see that it's starting to flatten out a little bit, but we still have that possibility of that tornado, which really is right over Alhambra right now. Like I mentioned, that's the main area of rotation that we're looking at here, even as we check into a few different things from the National Weather Service partners that we have and our emergency managers. They're going to continue with the tornado still at this moment. The tornado warning is still continuing. There's still signs of rotation. So they're kind of agreeing with what we're looking at here in the real time in Storm Alert here. They're kind of looking at real time and what we're looking at as well. So I just want to give you that update here because I think from Alhambra, we may see that very weak tornado that could have developed and is still potentially impacting you from Alhambra. Whether or not they go further than Madison County, Illinois with this, that remains to be seen here at this point. But it is something that we're going to continue to monitor over the next several hours. So I don't think that tornado threat is a big deal for us later on. Despite this small, brief tornado, I think this is going to be large hail, and this threat will probably continue through about just before sunset, as a lot of these areas specifically, and it's right here, just north of Alhambra, or on the north side of town, that's the main area of concern. I think areas north that may be in that tornado warning are still not really impacted, but I think they're going to wait just a second to see what the rest of the area, like Leaf, Old Ripley, areas further off to the southeast are going to be impacted. So will we get an additional tornado warning? That remains to be seen. If we can continue to see any rotation, then that's just fine. But we still have that 3 miles northwest of Alhambra. That was kind of the area that we had in question as an update from our emergency management partners right here. That's where we specifically had that possible tornado. It was a brief, weak tornado, but it's enough to do damage, and absolutely is one to be taken seriously here, still at this juncture as it moves off to the southeast. You look at downtown St. Louis on the camera on the left, and I'm going to look at this specifically. Just as a heads up, there are no other areas that are involved in tornado warnings. There are a couple of small handful of severe thunderstorm warnings where we have some larger hail up to golf ball size, wind gusts as well, and we may see some brief weak rotation. I'll put that other product on in some of these other areas, and like I mentioned, as the heating of the day is going into some of these, I think these storm structures are a little different than the one to the north that is tornado warned at the moment, but you can see how some of that is rotating at the moment. And so, this tornado warning still continues from Madison until 4:45. And that's what we'll continue to at least monitor here over the next several hours. As we still see that possibility of right here from Alhambra, northeast side at Kaufman, this is the area that is the main focus for the tornado warning, right here. And that's what we're going to look at. Whether or not we're seeing any brief rotation, we've had the signature on the radar. We've had a couple of lifetime right on the ground surface reports from somebody that is looking at these storms that's told us that there is a brief weak funnel, that whether or not it was on the ground for even 5 minutes and has gone back up, we're still seeing that possibility from a radar signature standpoint that it may impact other people in this process here from Madison, Illinois. So that latest scan starting to show maybe just a little bit, and I want to take this it might start into weaken a little bit more. That's probably the best scan I've seen maybe in the last 15 minutes because we did still gain that rotation. It looks like it's flattening itself out here just a little bit where we don't quite have those added colors where we still have that weak rotation. So that's a good sign, but like I mentioned, this one specific area, even as we kind of show you what this may look like, I think that there's a couple of different things as we just look right here. I'm going to look at this different product here because I think that as we kind of zoom in, I mean these cloud tops are pretty significant and they're all above 40,000 feet. So when we look at this one specifically, yeah, you can see them in the distance, but I think it's the rotation not only at the low level, which is right about here, we have that brief burst of heavy rain, and then you also have a little bit of rotation in the mid-levels. And that's what we look at from a radar standpoint to show you how much of this is, just one area of a brief spin or for something that continue. And that's what garners the tornado warning. And as we look at this 40,000-foot cloud top, that's why we have some of this large hail, because we have so much of this. Not with this one specifically, but I'll bounce on it to a different product and once again show you that there are some small areas still involved in this tornado warning. And it's still going to be something that Madison County, Illinois is going to be impacted until 4:45. So until we get an update that we don't have this possible tornado, which has impacted some, then that's when we'll get right back off. We'll get right back to racing. Very aware of it because I know I'm going to see it just after 5 and when the race is over. But anytime we have a tornado, we're going to take this real seriously. So, I know it's maybe not impacting a lot of people and it may not be impacting you where it's sunny on the Missouri side. We understand. We're going to get to you. We got to do our due diligence here and keep you up to date because we've got this possible tornado. And it wouldn't be just like this is a radar indicated one. This has been at least seen at times, and whether or not it still looks the same that it did minutes ago, that remains to be seen. I think, I'm still looking at leaf and areas out ahead of this tornado warning that may be at least impacted by some of that additional potential rotation. So these are areas that we're still going to look at. And I think most of this rotation is kind of working itself out to some degree, and we might be really close to where there is not a tornado warning anymore, but it's still just this little area north of Leaf, and I know that you're not involved in that, and there you go. Now we have this tornado warning which has been allowed to expire. So I'm looking ahead right now. I'm going to show you one more big picture here. We are out of severe thunderstorm warnings. We are out of tornado warnings in Madison County, Illinois. That rotation has finally started to weaken enough where we can not only get you back to the race safely, but we're going to have another update for you here coming up at 5 o'clock after the race, whatever is going on. But right now, tornado warning has been canceled for Madison County, Illinois, and we still have that severe thunderstorm watch until 7 p.m. We'll have updates on KSTK.com. In the meantime, we'll see you shortly, hopefully just after 5. Enjoy the race.